we're having across the country. But on the other side of all of that, one of the reasons could be socio-economic factors, right? Because South Africa is grappling with an escalating cost of living crisis. And a recent survey by Debt Rescue also reveals a distressing trend. Many households are actually sacrificing essential needs. This actually includes food, believe it or not, despite what we've just spoken about. And all of that in order to afford electricity. The survey indicates that 86% of those that responded to the survey have already begun cutting back on groceries as well as transport in order to keep the lights on. That's even before the 12.7% electricity tariff hike, which took effect then for direct Eskom customers in April this year. Let's discuss this a little bit further. Let's bring in Debt Rescue Chief Legal Officer Annaline van der Poel, who joins us now. Annaline, thank you so much for joining us. It couldn't be worse for wear. The numbers here are absolutely staggering, and we have that cost of living crisis in South Africa, and I don't think it's mentioned sufficiently, but the numbers suggest that it's a little worse than we thought.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, absolutely. It very much is. This is our second survey where we've in the past 12 months asked specifically around the effect of cost of living, in this case, obviously focusing on electricity. I mean, one of our questions were, have you made changes to your dietary plan because of this? And in both cases, they said yes. Previously, we've had very, very high percentages tell us that they're cutting back on meals. So they're actually cutting out an essential, one of your three main meals that you need a day. And in this case, they told us that they're starting to cut out food items, major food items from, very important food items from their budgets every month. So it's very, very concerning that the drastic steps South Africans are having to take.
So does this mean people are also getting themselves into more debt then off the back of this?
Unfortunately, yes. The cost of living crisis, yes, it's still there. We're still sitting with this terrible hangover all this time later. Yes, inflation has slowed down, but unfortunately, inflation is still increasing. It's just increasing at a much slower rate. Therefore, things are costing us more than they did 2-3 years ago. And for the average household, income is not keeping up with that. Debt is still at enormously high rates, which unfortunately means that South Africans just cannot get through. They have no choice but to look at using credit to put food on the table.
It's becoming so dire. How exactly do we solve for something like this? Because one imagines that household incomes are basically get their income eroded then. I mean, for example, if you're on the SASSA payment grant of any sort, the increase in electricity tariffs on their own would essentially wipe out that increase already.
Oh, absolutely, definitely. These increases are minuscule in comparison to the cost of living expenses. And this is food, electricity, fuel, all of this goes up. So I think the most important thing that we have to do is as individuals, what we can do is obviously just make sure we plan as much as we possibly can, where we shop, how we shop, what we're shopping, look for the budget deals, for the specials that are going on. But from a government perspective, I also think with this looming VAT increase that's been on the cards now for a while, if it does come into effect on the 1st of May, is that we really need to look at the basket of items which are included in that and possibly increase the zero VAT items to include more essential items. Ultimately, as long as the essential items are zero VATed, then it will alleviate a little bit of the pressure ultimately on the households.
Yeah, but some would argue that it actually doesn't. So some would say that even if you increase the amount of zero-rated VAT items, actually on the one end, it's just going to be too much of a cost because so much else also then increases as well. And that cost then is going to burden consumers at this time. Are there effective sort of planning methods that you perhaps use for some of your clients to consider in a time like this?
Well, I think, unfortunately, it goes back to that one thing most of us hate doing, and that's doing our monthly budget. But it is the only opportunity we have. And to be realistic about it and be honest about it. Perhaps we are overspending in one or two areas where we can cut back. Perhaps there's subscriptions we have we don't need. And like I say, when it comes to grocery planning specifically, We know every week we get our community papers. They're jam-packed full of the specials. Look at which of the items that are part of your essential groceries and see where you can get them cheapest. It's going to take a lot of discipline and planning from us as consumers, with the bit that is still within our control, to try and curb our expenses and be mindful of where we spend, where we tap, where we swipe, and try and control that to the best of our abilities.
For all those who do have credit cards, perhaps time to cut back?
Absolutely. Right now, a credit card is an absolute, in case of emergency item. It's there if absolutely you have run out of all options and the situation requires that intervention. Otherwise, the credit card should stay home. Concerns about buying food on credit remain very, very high, because that is something that, and we realize why consumers do this, they have no choice. But unfortunately, if you're buying food on credit, it means that you're consuming something you haven't paid for, and possibly are going to be paying off over quite an extended period of time. You've obviously got your interest rates effect on that. So it's definitely, we like I say, we fully understand, we know why, but it is concerning that we are seeing an increase in this trend.
Annaline, it certainly is concerning, certainly is worrying then as well. So appreciate your time. Thank you so much for highlighting this for us then and just sharing your thoughts in and around this. Annaline van der Poel is the Debt Rescue Chief Legal Officer then, joining us to unpack just a little bit with regards to the worrying trend. Yes, we speak on obesity on the one end, but people having to sacrifice things like food, their basic needs, in order just to keep the lights on. Well, still to come, the latest in your